All right, today we're doing something a little different. We're taking one of the giants of psychology, Carl Rogers, and his famous person-centered theory, and we're going to grade it. Yep, we are giving it an actual report card. Let's see how he does. But first, let's start with a really big question, one that gets right to the heart of what it means to be human. Are you in control? I mean, are you really the one calling the shots in your life? Or is it all just your environment, the rewards, the punishments, everything that's happened to you? This is one of the biggest showdowns in psychology. And here are our two heavyweights. In one corner, you've got Carl Rogers, who was all in on the idea of free choice. He believed we can steer our own ship. But in the other corner, B.F. Skinner. He thought freedom was basically a fantasy, that our environment is pulling all the strings. Understanding this clash is absolutely key to getting Rogers' whole point of view. Okay, so with that big philosophical fight as our backdrop, we're officially putting Rogers' theory on trial. We're going to see if his big ideas actually hold up when you put them under the microscope. But wait a second. How do you even grade a psychological theory? It's not like there's a right or wrong answer on a test, right? Is it just about whether it feels good? Nope, not at all. There's actually a real system for this, a set of rules. Okay, so here's the rubric. Think of this as the grading criteria for any useful scientific theory. First, does it spark new research? Second, can you actually test it and potentially prove it wrong? Does it help organize what we already know? Does it give us practical advice? Is it logical? And finally, is it simple? This is how we're going to grade a genius. Okay, the categories are set. Let's start handing out the grades and see how Rogers' theory scores on each of these 6 points. First on the list. Does it generate research? A really great theory should be like a spark. It should get other smart people excited, asking new questions, and running new experiments. So, how'd Rogers do? And the grade is C+. Average. Look, his theory was huge in therapy and education. It inspired tons of studies in those areas. But when you look at the wider field of personality psychology, not so much. So a solid start, but could be better. Okay, criterion number 2, falsifiability. Now, this sounds kind of backward, but it is the absolute bedrock of good science. A theory is only useful if it can be tested and potentially proven wrong. Think about it. If a theory can explain away any possible outcome, then it doesn't really explain anything at all, does it? And here, Rogers gets an A. This is a massive strength of his work. He was super clear. He framed his ideas in an if-then way. For example, if a therapist creates these specific conditions, then the client will grow. See, that's a clear, testable claim you can actually go out and verify. All right, next criterion. Does it organize knowledge? A good theory should take a whole bunch of messy, disconnected facts and observations and, like a good filing system, put them all into a framework that actually makes sense. And boom, another high grade for Rogers. His ideas weren't just for the therapist's couch. He used the same core principles to explain everything from how kids learn in a classroom to why nations have conflicts. It's a surprisingly powerful lens for understanding all kinds of human behavior. Now, this next one might be the most important one for most of us. Does the theory actually do anything in the real world? Does it guide action? Does it give us a practical roadmap to solve problems? And the grade is A+, very high. For therapists, this theory is a gold mine. Rogers didn't just give vague advice. He laid out 3 very specific conditions that he said were necessary and sufficient for helping someone. That is an incredibly clear and useful guide. All right, we're going to wrap up the grading with the last 2 criteria, and we'll lump them together. Is the theory internally consistent? Meaning, does it contradict itself? And is it parsimonious? Which is really just a fancy way of saying, is it simple and to the point? And yep, it's another A+. Rogers' theory is known for being really tight and consistent. Now, there is one small knock against it. Some of his terms, like organismic experiencing, can be a little fuzzy, a bit vague, but honestly, that's a minor point. Overall, the theory is a thing of beauty in its simplicity and logic. Okay, pencils down. The grading is done. So let's pull up the final report card and see what the overall GPA is for Carl Rogers' person-centered theory. And just look at that. That is an incredibly impressive report card. I mean, besides that one average grade, it's all high marks. And here's the big takeaway. This isn't just some feel-good philosophy. It's a seriously robust and well-regarded scientific theory. But that leads to the question, why? Why is it built this way? Why does it score so well? Well, to get that, we have to circle all the way back to where we started, to Rogers' incredibly optimistic view of what it means to be human. Now, look, it's really easy to hear this and think Rogers was just some naive optimist. But he wasn't. He was a realist. He said it himself. He was keenly aware that people can be, and often are, horribly destructive. But, and this is the key, he believed that underneath all that, at our very core, there is this strongly positive directional tendency in every single one of us. And that belief, that deep down we are all wired for growth and goodness, that's the engine driving his entire theory. So let's really break down what he believed about you, me, all of us. So for Rogers, we're not just lumps of clay shaped by our past. We're actively moving forward. We're social creatures. He believed our conscious choices are what really matter, and that our relationships and social world are way more powerful than our biology in making us who we are. We're not just reacting, we're striving, we have purpose. But here's the catch, and this might be the most important point in his entire theory. This amazing potential we have, it doesn't just happen on its own. Rogers was crystal clear that for a person to grow, to really flourish, they need 3 essential things from their environment. And these are the big 3. Number 1, congruence. That just means people being real with us, being genuine, no masks. Number 2, empathic understanding. That feeling of being truly seen and heard by someone else. And number 3, the one he's most famous for, unconditional positive regard. Being valued and accepted for exactly who you are, flaws and all, with no "I'll like you if" attached. Rogers believed when we get these 3 things from the people around us, that's when our natural drive to grow is finally unlocked. Which brings us to our final question for you to chew on. Is this optimistic view, the idea that every single one of us has this core of goodness, just waiting for the right conditions to come out, is that a real blueprint for how we can grow and build a better world? Or is it just a beautiful, naive dream? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me.